Well, hello, everybody. Once again, Robin Sachs and Lindsay House. We are a confidence coach and an accountability coach on a mission to just help put some thoughts and ideas and skills out there, some tips, some tools for you, just for the heck of it, so that you can maybe make 2022 your best year, one little step at a time. And the way that we've chosen to do that is by simply walking through the alphabet, and we call these the ABCs of success for 2022. And Lindsay, I believe we are on I today, right?
We are on I, and I initially was like, uh-oh, is I going to be hard? And you and I just started rattling them off, and I thought, oh, now I'm actually super excited about I. So where do we want to start today?
You know what? So one of the I's that came about that I would love to start with, because I think we have a couple I's that maybe you wouldn't think about. Because when we think of I think people might go to things like inspire, right? And even energy type things, invigorate. There's things like that, ideas, stuff like that. I love how we came up with some ones a little off the beaten path. And if I can toss it to you first, can we start with one of yours, which was irregular?
Yes. So where my brain went with irregular is how many of us, those who are listening, really think about this, do that all or nothing thinking. We're on, we're off, we're into great habits, we're out of great habits. And that's where irregular was coming to mind. And that if we could shift that, if we could believe that if we could just stay consistent with our small efforts daily, that regularity would be what ultimately starts to provide consistent success. And so for the black and white thinker, what are your barriers? And Robin and I are constantly trying to give you homework, things to think on. What is kicking you into irregularity? What are those moments where you go, why am I off again? Why do I feel like I get this great flow and then all of a sudden, shoot, I feel like nothing's going right anymore. And why I want to bring this up is because that feeling of on and off again oftentimes isn't so much off again. Oftentimes we are still upholding some really good habits. And some of like the examples in my line of work with, I do a lot more in like nutrition and fitness, is that somebody can feel off, but once I ask them, they're like, well, I am still drinking my water. Well, I am still hitting 10,000 steps. Well, I am still. So it's like, so what fell off that is making it all feel like it went away? Well, I stopped tracking. I stopped tracking my food. Okay. So you fell back for a second out of your goals, your specific goals. So Robin, what do you think about with that? Because you're more in the confidence area, where do you see people going in and out or on and off?
So we all come across the black and white thinkers, right? At times we're black and white thinkers too. That's just how our brains work sometimes, especially when the stress levels go up and the confidence levels go down. We begin to naturally think, oh, this is all falling apart.
Yeah.
And, it goes to that extreme quickly. And I love how you said it, Lindsay, you're doing this and that is now what you're doing. And you're convinced that you're doing nothing. We don't stop to remind ourselves, no, you're still doing all this. Just let's add this back in the mix. It's that little piece.
Yeah.
It's not everything. So what I often come across with that is, and how I broach that with my clients is, if you're black and white thinking, you're looking for perfection of some kind. And in your mind, you either succeed or fail. Mm-hmm. You're either perfect or you're horrible at it. And so the wording that I always invite and encourage people to use as they're developing new habits, or more difficultly, sometimes altering familiar habits, and you're catching yourself doing things or not doing things constantly, just because now that we're working on it, your brain's really hyper aware of every time you don't do the new thing you're trying to do. The way that I broach it is, I ask them to use this wording. I'm doing it more often than not. Yeah. And that's it, because it's not about being perfect ever. Please don't ever try and do that. That is such a waste of our time and energy, 100% of the time, trying to be perfect. But if you're doing the things you want to be doing that are serving you or whomever you're working with or whatever, the things that are working for you, getting you closer to your goals, to your new habits, are you doing those more often than you're not? If that's the case, to your point, wow, look how far ahead you are than where you were before. You were never drinking the water before. You were never counting steps before. You weren't doing any of it. Now you're doing some of it really consistently. Even if you're not doing all of it, that doesn't matter. And I saw a wonderful visual of this on, I think it was Instagram the other day. Someone had posted, and it said what people think consistency looks like, and it had like 10 boxes in a row perfectly checked. And they said what consistency actually looks like, and it was like 3 boxes were checked, and then one was X'd, and then there was a box checked, and then X, and then another box and another box checked. So little mindset shift. Perfect doesn't exist. You don't need the boxes checked every single day. What you need is the boxes checked more often than not, and you're doing great.
Yes, 100% agree. I picture this visual also with like your habit tracker that you keep at your desk so that you can see when you've checked boxes and are you consistently doing it over months at a time. I keep a blank calendar at my desk that has check boxes where I can put in my blank calendar what are the things that I made efforts on, whether that is water or not having a glass of wine with dinner or whatever that looks like. You can look back over your months and go, I've been trying. I have legit been giving it a good go, which to me brings up our next letter or our next topic word, intentional, that I would like you to run with here.
It's a deal. Intentional is one of my favorite words. I overuse intentional a lot because it needs to be overused often. Again, as a confidence coach, oftentimes I'm working with people who are challenged with stress, anxiety, things that are throwing them into sort of an autopilot or throwing them into situations where they're feeling out of control. Mm-hmm. And the only time we can be a little more confident, a little less stressed is when we feel a little bit more in control. So if we're constantly in a mode of, I'm sort of reacting to everything around me, at no point am I feeling like I'm actually bringing those things to the table. Part of the shift is we're going to start working on being more intentional. And part of being intentional is, I always think of Yoda, right? There is no try. Do or do not. There is no try. Being intentional is simply making a decision. We can start there and say that's the basis or the core for being intentional. I'm going to choose to do something. I'm picking up my mug right now. I'm going to pause for a moment while I take a sip. Awesome. I'm talking to you and maybe I'm speaking. I'm going to stop and look at my notes. I'm going to come back up and I'm going to talk to you some more. Everything you do, get in the habit of being intentional, because when you're intentional, what happens is, one, you're making choices and taking action in the moment because you have chosen to do that. Not because you're reacting, not because you're responding, not because someone else said you should do this or you shouldn't do this, which is sometimes that little self-talk voice in our heads always kind of poking the bear. Why are you doing that? Why? Don't do that. They're going to think this. They're going to make you, it looks like you don't know what you're talking about. So part of how to stop that self-talk voice that is never helpful, that's a little bit of a critical bully sometimes and gets in our way and raises our stress levels and brings the confidence down, is instead of reacting to that, I'm going to make some choices. And I encourage people to start being intentional, even with just the minutia in life, right? Start being in the moment, paying attention, being present, and everything you choose to do, think about the fact that you're doing it, right? If you're hopping onto that Zoom meeting next, don't just run and get your stuff together and hit the button and then start. Take a moment and go, okay, got my thing, I got that. Let me take a breath. All right, let me hop on to the Zoom meeting. And you might think, well, no, that's exactly what gets you off of autopilot. I'm not stopping. I'm in constant fight or flight, which if we pay attention to our days, we're in that mode so often and we don't even realize it. So start with little tiny things, right? If I'm going to make a phone call or check my social media, stop for a second, take a breath and think to yourself, let me grab my phone and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to check Twitter. It might sound ridiculous, But the more intentional, the more you get in the habit of being intentional and making your choices, because they're choices you're going to go make right now, the more comfortable you get. And when the stakes start getting high, you find you're not reacting more, you're truly responding more in that moment. And you can get yourself in a place wherever you need to be. And the things that used to be embarrassing or create anxiety, or you get in your head and go, what are they going to think of me for doing that? When you just own it and you do it with intention, your confidence, the perception of you and your confidence goes through the roof, because confident people don't worry about what everyone's thinking. They do the things they need to do. That's it. So right there, it'll send your messages to your brain going, we're good. We got this. And people perceiving you will look at you and not even think about anything you're doing, because everything will be done in a way that just looks like, yeah, you meant to do that. Moving on. And they'll be with you for the next thing. So that's where intentional takes me.
Oh, so good. I only have one little thing to tag into that, and it comes from one of my favorite podcasts, Families That Stick Together. And this is about families being intentional, and we can take this over into wherever we want to take it. But she always talks about the stop, drop, and fold method.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody's speaking to you, you stop what you're doing, you lay down your phone, you drop your phone, lay down your phone, drop whatever in your hands, and then you fold your hands and you give that other person your direct attention. And I think, to your point, I was picturing that as you're about to jump on a Zoom call. Stop, take your breath, drop whatever in your hands, fold, get ready to like give the focus where it needs to be. And it really, I feel like with kids, with spouse, if we all got in a better habit of pulling in intention, man, relationships, they go up. It's amazing when but again, it takes intention to do it. And it doesn't work if we're just, to your point, just running through the day, just kind of barely getting places, barely giving attention where it needs to go until our head goes on the pillow at night. And then it's like, well, shoot, that's not how I wanted to feel at the end of the day.
Right. So, and actually, with something you just said, Lindsay, when our head hits the pillow, if we weren't intentional, we were just reacting all day. Yeah. All of those things get replayed in our heads, and good luck falling to sleep and getting a good night's sleep. I could have done this. I should have done this. Oh, I forgot to do. I could have said it this way. When you get in the habit of getting in the moment and being more intentional, when you lay down at night, your head has nothing to go back and replay.
That's so good.
That makes a huge difference. And if you want to know, well, how do I make that shift? The difference between reacting and responding, or the difference between reacting or being intentional, is one breath. Start there. Before you do something, stop and take a breath and then do it. That little tiny space, that's where all your power lies. But we brush by those spaces all the time. So something to try, something to play with.
Yeah, so good.
All right. So I want to throw another one out to you. One of the I's that I think is really powerful is intellectual.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So I think when we think intellectual knowledge, we are all constantly seeking more of, right? We would like to come across very intellectual. We would like to continue fueling ourselves with more knowledge. And I think that there's a piece of us that feels like if we keep seeking knowledge, that we're gonna find that magic bullet, that thing that at some point, let's talk weight loss for a second. If I keep seeking knowledge, I'm going to find that thing that's going to work for me. And it's going to be like, poof, all my trouble with weight loss is gone. And I've discovered the aha. Where I actually feel like there's a thing called like the knowledge gap or the discipline gap. We were doing a book study with a therapist, and it's called Dear Anxiety, Let's Break Up. And in the end, she said that she ends up having a lot of conversations with her clients about, it's less about the knowledge gap and it's more about the discipline gap. So it goes back to, I know that Robin and I talk about action a lot, but you probably already have the knowledge that you need to go out, set forth, be successful. And it's really more about pulling that in and doing it. So don't always beat down that door of intellect because you probably already have what you need at the moment. I don't know. What about you, Robin?
I love that. And I'm so glad you brought that word into the discussion today, because if you take nothing else away from this, know this: you already know enough.
Yeah.
You don't need to read one more book. You don't need to take one more class. You don't need to attend one more webinar. You already know enough. And I think that this is truly a place so many people get stuck. I'm almost there. I'm almost ready. I'm almost, and it's all about that misguided thing where we think we need to know more. And as you were saying, there's such a difference between knowing and doing. And you can know that much and start doing. And if you keep learning, guess what? You're going to learn a little bit more and 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 you're never going to do. If you learn a tiny bit and go do, you instantly learn this much.
Yeah.
You are light years ahead than the person still learning in those other traditional, let me go gather more information ways. Knowing teaches you more than any other kind of learning could do, hands down. And so the quicker you get to doing, the quicker your intellect goes up. And it has nothing to do with opening that next book or taking another class or doing whatever, or talking to another person. So that word enough, I think, is really key there, because do I know everything? No, who knows everything? Mm-hmm. Nobody knows everything. And guess what? I have this in the palm of my hand. It's called Google. I don't need to know everything. In 30 seconds, I can know anything. So yeah. I know no more or no less than anyone else in the world who holds a cell phone in their hand, do I? Literally. So I don't know what we're trying to attain by knowing more. The idea is none of those people is ahead of me if I go out and go take step one right now today. I am now light years ahead of all of those people who also know. So that action, again, is such a powerful thing. And, that's not to degrade learning in any traditional sense at all. So please don't, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you don't if you don't take what you know and put it into action or apply it, that knowledge is basically worthless.
Right. And that you can do both at the same time. You can start your action and keep learning. It's just don't let you. I love that you said it's stuck. That's where people get stuck, and they do. It's like, that's if you can break past it, get the action going, and then promise yourself, then I'll keep grabbing those books. I'll keep learning. I'll keep listening. But yeah, you have to move forward.
That's how we continue to grow. Yeah.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, kind of as an aside with that too, is, and this is what we all do, is we think that moving to doing, oh no, I'm not ready yet. We have this fear, this anxiety, we're scared of going to doing. But when we finally go do it, 99% of the time, don't we go, that was so much easier than I thought, right? So get out of your own way. Stop with all it is unknown. And the moment you do it, it's known. If you don't do it, you're going to keep feeling that unknown, even though it's some little tiny thing that you could go know right now if you just did it. And that builds, again, that stress, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the nerves, the fear, whatever it might be for you. That's growing and keeping you from doing it, ironically, just because you're not doing it. Go do it and all that goes away.
Yeah.
Because now you know. And now you can do the next thing. And it gets easier and easier, because once you do it and realize that wasn't as bad as I thought.
Right.
Now you can take that into everything going forward, and you see how much more quickly you move forward.
Ah, it's so good.
Nice.
Oh, okay. What are you choosing out next? Because I think I'm looking at intuition, but that wasn't what we were thinking.
You know what? I think in the interest of time, I'm going to say we probably have maybe about 10 left total, because we want to respect everyone's time who is chiming in. So you know what? I would love to discuss ignore. Ignore might be my favorite I.
And save the best for last.
And in a nutshell, it's so easy, especially if you're learning a new skill, or if we're looking to shift habits, or if we're looking to grow in any way, personally, professionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, whatever it might be, we get really focused on what we should be doing. right? It kind of goes along with, right? What am I putting on my habit tracker? What am I making sure is on my calendar daily to check off? What is it that I'm doing? And we focus on that. What often gets in the way of that, because once we have clarity on those handful of things, because it's usually maybe a handful of things, it's not a whole lot of things that get you from where you are to where you want to go. But what often gets in the way is all that other clutter of things that you're also trying to focus on that do not need your time and attention. And so knowing what to ignore is huge, because when you start releasing the things that do not need your attention, but you're telling yourself, I better keep track of that, I better make sure that I have that, you have such a cluttered, hoarded space up here. As soon as you start getting rid of some of those things that you do not need to be focusing on at all, all of a sudden there's space for the other stuff to thrive and grow and build. And it's amazing. And a lot of times with clients who struggle with that they think they have to have a hand in everything, right? And it's not even just that it's controlling type personalities do that. People of all kinds think that everybody needs me to help. Givers always think I got to do for everyone else. And the reality is, no, you do not. You can be a good person and say no. You can. It's okay. You can be a great person and let someone else do something for them so they can grow. You can stop doing it for them. There's a lot of different ways this looks, but I oftentimes, if someone's struggling with that, is I'll have them make a similar type habit tracker, but of the things they're going to ignore today.
That's so good.
Because that gets it really clear in your head. What am I on autopilot going to? And it's pulling my attention that way, or I'm pushing my attention that way is probably more likely. And to really get them hyper aware of, whoa, no, I have to X that. I didn't ignore that today. I did that again. And they start to see all of that you did that you could have ignored because it did not need your attention, pulled you away from not being able to do some of the things you wanted to do that are going to get you closer to your goal. And think about the time, the energy, the space that took. Think about what you maybe took away from someone else, because on autopilot, I'm doing something for someone, but I'm not showing them how to do it. I'm not helping them try it themselves. I'm not doing those things. So when we don't ignore, we not only impact us, we sometimes impact other people, which is interesting to think about. But knowing what to not pay attention to is just as important, if not sometimes more important, than knowing what you're going to pay attention to.
Okay, this is so interesting because this has been apparently the theme of my entire week. So in my membership, we have a therapist talk once a month, and our talk this month was about knowing and not doing. And it boiled down to the emotions that come. We have like conscious emotions and subconscious emotions. And then my podcast that I released tomorrow is about the same thing. She calls it Emotions Have Siblings. And this is what you're talking about, Robin, is that when we need to ignore something, it is the first layer of the onion. And then there is so many other things that boil down around that, because there's an emotion that comes with why we're not able to just ignore it. You pointed out it can be you're a giver, a pleaser personality. And that can be something very conscious that we're aware that we're a giver. But there's normally something unconscious layered underneath that next level. And that too is pulling at you. You might not be able to say this, but like you might not feel like you have worth if you're not giving. So it's like dig here, dig at the conscious level, and then dig even one more step. What's that next sibling to that emotion of, well, if I don't have worth, or if it doesn't give me purpose on this and on this earth in general. So to go with all of that, it all of a sudden answers the question, well, if I know I should ignore it, why am I not just able to ignore it? Because there's so many more reasons behind that. And for anybody listening going, I hear you, I have no idea where to start with this. A lot of times this can be, if it's deep rooted, it's a therapy journey. It's a, let's start here. We're acknowledging it today. And we're going to do a little, I think this could be our homework, Robin, is that if we can start to jot down what are our conscious thoughts around why we're not able to ignore, as well as writing down what are those things let's start with write down what you need to ignore. What are the conscious thoughts about why you're not doing it, even though you know you should do it?
Right.
And then if you can start to dig that next level to unconscious of what other feelings might be surfacing for you, then I think that could be a really good end for us today, because
Pardon me.
yeah, no, you're good. Ignore. And then I think we could also keep it so simple. When I think ignore, I always tell my community, eyes on your own paper, like do your own thing. Put your horse blinders on. When you have a goal, when you have a focus, don't worry about what everybody else is doing. If you keep those horse blinders on and eyes on your own paper, your successes will look a lot different than if you're judging against somebody else's successes.
Love it. So peel the onion. Yeah. And I'll go back to intention for 1 second and couple it with what we're saying. Givers need to set limits because takers never will.
Yes.
And so remember, it's okay to be that type of person, but understand that where intention comes in is I also have me to work with. And this is where my focus is. And in order to give me more of what I need to focus on to be a better person, because the better I can make me, the better I am to serve all those other people I would like to help and serve, which is great. But I need to pull some of this energy I'm giving away all the time and pull a little bit of it back and find that balance for you. But if you're giving it all away all the time, that ignore and starting to peel the onion, why am I always giving my energy away? And often then complaining that I have no energy or time for me, right? So find that balance, peel the onion back. As always, feel free, comment. We can start a discussion about that. And as always, of course, you can reach out to Lindsay or myself at any time. We are both coaches, and we do work with people individually to help them get from where they are to where they want to be. Yes, Lindsay,
thank you for joining us. No, thank you for joining us today. And if you do your homework, we promise that will just expedite your process.
And we will see you the next time for the letter J as we continue walking through the ABCs of your 2022 success. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.